So we're Trusted Smart Chain, and what we're doing is we're bridging the gap between high-valued assets and tokenization. When companies are going to go public, there's a process that they follow. They typically would go get a valuation, they file a proper registration, and they're fully compliant with the Security Exchange Commission. When it comes to cryptocurrency, there is no process, there is no framework. And what that does is it leaves a lot of wiggle room for bad actors. And so what's happening right now, especially with the new administration coming in, is cryptocurrency is growing up. There's this whole new demographic that's now coming into the industry, and they don't want to play with speculative meme coins. They're looking for validation. They want to have tokens that are backed by something tangible. So what Trusted Smart Chain does is we're bridging that gap. We developed a universally accepted framework, a regulatory framework for tokenizing real-world assets. Well, I think that right now what we're seeing is so many new people that are coming into cryptocurrency. They're starting to feel a little bit more comfortable. They're feeling, that this era of speculation is now being replaced by tangibility. We're seeing Bitcoin that's being acknowledged at the highest levels. Bitcoin, XRP, Solana, they're all being added into the overall strategic reserve. All of the major banks are now talking about it. So even a few years ago, the banks were criticizing cryptocurrency. They were telling you to stay away from it, that it was a bubble or that it was a decentralized Ponzi scheme. Now, if you can't beat them, join them, because now the banks today are integrating cryptocurrency and blockchain into every facet of business. There's this massive shift that's now happening in finance. And so what Trusted Smart Chain does is we are providing trust, truth, and transparency in an industry that hasn't always, had those, embodied those qualities. And for that, that allows for people to be more comfortable when it comes to getting involved with digital currency. We, to our knowledge, are the first blockchain in the entire world to require every single real-world asset to file a proper registration A statement and to be fully compliant and registered as an investment with the Security Exchange Commission. And so what that does is it holds the real-world asset accountable to a standard now. And if they're not, they're going to get in trouble with the government. On the other side, you've got these investors, that smart money, that new money that's coming into the industry, and they're looking for protection. They're looking for, they want to be able to evaluate these high-valued assets and make well-informed decisions whether or not they should invest. Not only that, but these smart money investors are looking for dividends and distributions with these companies that are raising capital. And so what Trusted Smart Chain does is we put those two together, the framework that we've created, which ultimately leads to more trust, more truth, and more transparency. And that's really what everybody's looking for. And that's going to usher in that next level of adoption. People don't realize that we're already at a place where 6% globally, 6% of the population owns cryptocurrency. Here in the United States, it's 20%. And so that number is growing at a staggering rate. And companies like ours are going to continue to allow for more trust as we move forward. This is an interesting question because decentralization is all about putting the power back into the people's hands. So it's about, there's a saying that I'm fond of, and that is gold is God's money. You've got fiat currency is the government's money. Cryptocurrency is the people's money. So yes, there needs to be regulation. Yes, there needs to be a process, and we need to hold these tokenized companies accountable. But at the same time, we have to be careful not to regulate it to a point where we end up in the same place with fiat currency. As fiat, they continue to print it and print it and print it and print it. What happens to the value of your dollar? It just continues to go down. On the flip side, cryptocurrency really is about the people. In most cases, you've got, Trusted Smart Chain, for example, we have a fixed supply. That fixed supply leads to, in most cases, historically speaking, a unique place of stored value. And that's really what people are looking for today, especially in this economy. So we have to be careful not to over-regulate it, but at the same time, there has to be framework, there has to be clarity so that more innovation can happen. Over the last 4 years, we've been lacking that, that regulation, that clarity, the laws, if you will. And so it's forced most of these companies to operate in a gray area. It's kind of like if you were driving on the Autobahn and there's no speed limit, but they could pull you over for speeding at will. That's essentially how we've operated for the last 5 years. And so I think it's important that they give us clarity and a framework, but then still allow us to be able to operate from a decentralized standpoint. Trusted Smart Chain wants to be part of the solution. There's been this lack of clarity, lack of framework. Is it a security? Isn't it a security? Overregulation that's pushed a lot of the innovation outside of the United States. And so now that there's a commitment to making the United States the crypto capital of the world, Trusted Smart Chain wants to be that leader when it comes to tokenizing real world assets. And the framework that we've established, what it does is it gives these businesses a pathway to raising capital, one that is much less painful than going public or perhaps even going to private equity. But on the flip side of the coin, it really caters to the smart money and the new demographic of people that are coming into cryptocurrency that are looking for something tangible. So at the end of the day, Trusted Smart Chain is helping the industry to go from hype and speculation to tangibility and substance, and we're the bridge that's making it happen.